Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Don't Praise the Machine, the survivor's guide to the cultural apocalypse. And today, we're looking at a trend that's been quietly acquiring our cinema screens like a hostile takeover. We're talking about what John has dubbed the capitalist procedural genre of movie. It's no longer about a hero going on a quest to save the world. It's about a founder going on a quest to disrupt the legacy industry and secure a Series B. We've traded the hero's journey for the CEO's pivot. Think about it. We've had The Social Network making coding look like a high-speed chase, or The Big Short turning subprime mortgages into a thriller. We're watching movies about the origin story of a sneaker in air, the cutthroat logistics of a milkshake machine in The Founder, and the high-stakes drama of BlackBerry versus iPhone. It's as if the machine has finally realized it doesn't need to entertain us with dragons or aliens anymore. It can just show us the terms and conditions sheet of a company that we're all familiar with and call it a summer blockbuster. John, has the grind set finally replaced the epic as our culture's primary mode of storytelling?
Beautifully done, Al. Beautifully introduced. And welcome, everybody. The idea of this kind of emerged from, I guess, some recent news about upcoming films, as well as sort of me reading about a recent spate of films. It's kind of been in the back of my mind for a while. And when I mentioned it to you, I wasn't quite sure if anyone had sort of cottoned on to it. And as usual, we're ahead of the game. We're ahead of the curve. There's not a great deal of commentary that I think draws this together as a genre. But as you've said, I've tentatively dubbed it the capitalist procedural. And I want to understand. I want you to help me understand. I want our listeners and viewers to help me understand what's going on here. Because if you look back at the history of storytelling, you start with Homer's Odyssey and you move to, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight and Beowulf. And then you get into, the kind of classic films of just looking at the history of cinema. You start with like a feature-length film of Ned Kelly, our great bushranger hero here in Victoria, one of the earliest feature films. And then, of course, you're getting into stories about the Wild West and stories about, kind of fantasy worlds and science fiction. You got Metropolis. You've got kind of heroes' journeys. You've got great romances. You've got war movies, all that sort of stuff. And then for some reason, and we'll have a think about when it might have really taken off, there was a couple of warning signs in the 80s and into the 90s. But you started to get this genre of films emerging, I think, particularly during and after the financial crisis in 2008, that focused specifically on business and commercial matters as their kind of core, motivating theme. So, they're about, rather than being about, political drama or mystery or heists or war or thrillers or whatever, they're about transactions and commerce and institutions and logistics and finance and law sometimes and organizational decision making. And yet they have the movement and the sort of buzz of a thriller. And they're kind of the dramatic engine, as I say, is this sort of process or procedure that follows maybe the development of a product, maybe the merging between two companies, maybe the emergence of a company as a dominant force in a particular area of commerce, etc. And so, instead of having a murder or a gunfight or a chase or a Death Star that needs to be blown up by a young hero, they've got as the kind of set piece at the center of the film, BJ Novak explaining to Michael Keaton how McDonald's is actually a property business and not a burger business, or some meeting or negotiation or spreadsheet or something that kind of sits at the center of the narrative, and I just think, what is going on here? Like, why is it, and how is it that these what are basically kind of dramatized documentaries. And there are a couple of examples which I might drop in of TV series that are sort of on the same lines. Why is it that a story which is basically about a commercial decision or transaction or innovation has become one of the sort of mainstays of cinema? And I mean, we'll get into this, but there are often kind of similarities in style as well. They're sort of shot in this particular way that almost is quite highly stylized, looks like a sort of flashy ad. They might have like a Brian Eno style ambient soundtrack and a bit of slow-mo while the main character is thinking about, that comes up with the idea of putting compressed air in the soles of a shoe or whatever it is. And so in a sense, they're quite dull and practical. I mean, they're the sort of thing that would make interesting reading if you were reading the Australian Financial Review or Bloomberg or something, but it is counterintuitive that they would be made into a blockbuster, which has a wide audience and is funded by a big studio. And it seems weird to me that they are of interest to a wide cross-section of the community. And so I want to get into why that might be. Is it just to motivate us with a few questions? Is it that we've run out of source material and we're looking at, episodes of Freakonomics podcast for scripts rather than looking at books or, reboots of old movies or looking at reiterations of stories that began on the stage or whatever? Or does it represent some kind of maybe it's not an either or thing, but does it represent some kind of attempt collectively, perhaps unconsciously as a culture, to inject this sort of big business and capitalism that dominates many of our lives with a sense of meaning, with a sense of profundity, with a sense of kind of dramatic urgency, as a way of shielding ourselves from the fact that it's quite boring and empty? Or, does it help us pretend that the business world is kind of more human than it actually is? Are we turning business people into heroes because nobody is, the kind of the old tropes of somebody going and slaying a dragon or whatever don't really ring true for modern society? You're more likely to prove your chops as a modern hero by rising and grinding than by
rise and grind, rise and grind,
rise and grind. Or have we just become boring? I don't know. So we can go through all that, but I just want to sort of give people a sense of what I'm talking about in terms of some examples.
I watched recently. I actually watched The Big Short for the first time.
Classic example.
In the last couple of weeks. I've obviously seen The Social Network. I watched Tetris recently. I kind of even forgot where I even watched that. And
classic thing you might have watched on a plane. I reckon that's the.
I think it was a very plain movie.
Yeah.
The Social Network. The Founder with Ray Kroc and McDonald's.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. And so I absolutely knew what you'd said. It was interesting when you mentioned it to me because I thought I hadn't really realized that this was a thing until you mentioned it, because when I tried to think of equivalent films in the 1980s and 90s, it was very difficult for me to even think of anything like this. The closest that I kind of came was something like Wall Street, which isn't specific to a company. It's a fictitious company.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's not really the same thing. I mean, yes, it's about capitalism, but it's not saying this is specifically about a company that you are familiar with, which a lot of these are.
Exactly. Yeah, I'd say Wall Street is definitely part of one of the inputs into the development of this genre. But as you say, it's kind of picking up on a corporate culture and on a particular moment in US history in particular, and on kind of broader themes about greed and, ambition and so on, and maybe an aesthetic. But it definitely is part of it. Then I had to think about things like Jerry Maguire, which always struck me as a slightly weird film, but is also a film that's kind of partly about the business of, I guess, being an agent and the sort of, show me the money being the kind of central catchphrase of that film. But really that film too is about, I mean, it is kind of about that, but it is, partly about the romance between Tom Cruise and Renee Zellweger and her weird little pudgy boy with glasses. and and it's also kind of an outlier. Then you've got Glenn Ross, which started as a play, famously with Fott's friend of the show, Alec Baldwin, in one of his pivotal roles. Probably led to him landing the role of Jack Donaghy in 30 Rock. But again, that struck me as a slightly weird film about, a bunch of struggling salesmen who are sort of conniving with each other. And then you've got things like, I guess, kind of Wolf of Wall Street. Maybe you could think of that as an example of that. It's much more in the modern era. But they're kind of using, I would argue they're using commercial settings or contexts as a way of exploring the human condition in a more in a way that is not that different from traditional storytelling. You might be on Wall Street, but it's about, like, I don't know, somebody kind of losing themselves or, getting consumed by greed or whatever, which is not a new idea. That's kind of been a theme of storytelling for a long time. Whereas that's pretty different from, a movie like The Founder or Steve Jobs' biopic or BlackBerry or The Margin Call or whatever, which are really about, like, the point of them is this tale of a commercial development. Or the movie Air, which I've also seen not that long ago, that is really just about how people at Nike revived the Nike brand by doing a deal with Michael Jordan, which, again, like, interesting subject for an economics podcast, but a weird subject for a movie. Then you've got things like, as I say, The Big Short. Ford versus Ferrari arguably sort of falls into that because it's, it's partly about these kind of characters, but it's also about this sort of industrial competition. As you said, Tetris. And then adjacent to that, I guess you've got things like Mad Men. I would say Succession is kind of not quite in the genre, because Succession is about, it's basically about the Murdochs and that sort of ilk, but it's probably also dealing with questions of like with characters rather than just with commerciality. Although, like those other films, they often are about this kind of use of that. There's a lot of use of corporate jargon that sort of flatters the audience by, making as if they understand it, but perhaps a lot of it is just kind of, a lot of it probably to people who understand that jargon is probably used pretty loosely, but it sort of draws you into that world and makes it feel very real. And the jargon is often used as, like, in place of dramatic language. They'll be saying, "Oh, we need to get the slide deck immediately, or everything's going to blow up." And
it's a bunch of things about Zoom calls, and everyone goes, "Oh, I get that."
Exactly.
He was muted.
Yeah.
He was muted on the Zoom call. Oh.
Yeah, that's right. So as I said, like, a lot of it kind of seems to come to life after 2008. And so I wonder if part of it, I don't know, maybe tell me what you think, but part of it is obviously that led to some soul searching and some reflection on capitalism and opened the door to a movie like The Big Short. But maybe it just opened the door to studios realizing, actually, we can sort of do this semi-documentary style film and people will watch it and they'll kind of enjoy the fact that it makes them feel vicariously productive or well-informed. And, it's a bit like watching Stressful Sandwiches, as you call it, The Bear, and feeling like you're getting this window into the starting up of a business, and you feel kind of vicariously energized, and you kind of enjoy the tension of it all. It's a bit of that. There's a bit of people getting burnt out trying to create the perfect shoe or whatever, the perfect supply chain. And I'm sure there'll be some. There's definitely some in the pipeline about Sam Bankman-Fried and crypto and all this sort of stuff. I'm sure that's all ahead of us. But is there more to it than that? Is it partly about our attempt to come to grips with the capitalist world by telling stories to ourselves, or demystify these sort of powerful institutions that we don't really understand, or like make them seem more human? Or is it just product placement? You know, I don't know.
I think on a very basic level, it could also be the fact that in the 1980s, you could have a film about an employee who just goes to their job and they earn enough money that the film is interesting because they have a life outside of their job and they have a wife and kids and a house, and they can get value and meaning and a pleasant life outside of their world as an employee. Whereas now I think people go, well, I don't really want to watch a film about an employee anymore because they're just like struggling to do anything and it's really hopeless. But what gives me hope is seeing a film about the guy who ends up having billions of dollars because his life would be easier, and that makes sense to me. I understand the ambition. I understand the hope.
Yeah.
I'm on board with this.
Yeah.
Because I'm just thinking about. I'm thinking about the fact that a film about an employee at a company. I'm just trying to think of how you would sell that to people. I mean, that becomes the problem with that is that becomes a drama.
Yeah.
And audiences today are just like less interested in going to those films, or at least that's what the studios think.
Yeah.
The other thing that I read, which I thought, oh, of course, and again, this is why you would do a film about the founder of a company and not just a low-level employee, is because it's recognizable IP. And that's what everybody is addicted to in Hollywood these days.
Yes.
Don't want to do a film about the no-name startup that you've just made a dramatized version. You've just made a drama about a company that doesn't exist in the real world. It's loosely based on real companies, but you don't name the real company. No, people don't want that. People want to know about the company. They want to know that you're doing a film about a real company that they've heard of, because they won't go into a cinema. They won't stream anything unless they have some pre-existing familiarity with the thing it is that you are doing a film about. So you do the Facebook film, and then people go, oh, we should go and see the Facebook film. People go, I know that. I use Facebook. I'll go see the Facebook film.
True. It's true. And you've talked about that before in the context of kind of the addiction to reboots and sequels, and the fact that people are, for whatever reason, maybe we're just kind of more time poor. Maybe we're just less, because everything's so kind of algorithmically tailored to our tastes now, we're less tolerant of taking any risks with entertainment.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm not going to go to the movies and see something that I've seen a 60-second, I mean, I probably would see a 60-second trailer of something, not really understand what it is, and just go and risk being bored or like wasting my money on a movie that I didn't love.
Yeah.
But if you say to me, it's about this, it's about the history of this brand that you know, then I'll be like, well, that doesn't really excite me, but it also doesn't confuse me, and it's probably going to be okay. So I'll do it.
It's a difference between if somebody says, "Oh, should we go and see this? Should we go and see a film? It's called Restaurant," and you go, "Oh, cool. What's that about?" And you go, "Well, it's about this guy, and he starts a restaurant, and it's kind of difficult to start it, but then he finds out that he buys a milkshake machine, and then it turns out that you know." It has a lot to do with the kind of properties that you invest in and put the restaurant. And people are going to go, I don't know what you're talking about. It's boring. Shut up.
Why is that?
Whereas if you just go, it's the McDonald's movie, then people go, I know this. I'm going to go.
The closest one to what you described is probably Chef with Jon Favreau, which I just went to see because he cast himself in a movie where I think his current love interest was Scarlett Johansson, and his ex-wife was Sofia Vergara. And I thought, you are shameless. He's just kind of casting himself as the love interest of two of the hottest women in Hollywood. And I thought, I just want to see this for the audacity of the man from Swingers. But yeah, I think the first point is also really good, that there is something about the escape from the rat race that excites people. And obviously that's what drives a lot of kind of hustle culture as well, that you idolize these people who, represent basically kind of real life heroes, even though often it's unclear what they've done except sell you this course that you can use to escape the rat race yourself. That's how they've escaped it. But we love the idea that, there's this kind of way out of the 9-to-5 grind by, if you just had the perfect idea and you just worked your balls off and there was a nice montage with you hitting your stride and selling it to the biggest company in the world, or like having a meeting with Michael Jordan where he decides to be your spokesperson or whatever, that you can kind of triumph over this force that, in the context of an employee, is not a particularly hopeful force. It's more just to kind of, oh, well, you'll just be in this job until you die or retire. But I think it is also about, because there's a big difference between movies that are sort of critical of capitalism, and Wall Street might fall into that category, and movies like Air, which don't really offer any meaningful critique of capitalism. They sort of celebrate it, and they kind of reinforce our faith in it as the way to get the best ideas and the best people together, and rewarding innovation and entrepreneurship and all that sort of thing. So maybe it's partly about kind of making us feel more faith in those myths of, or people might disagree about whether they are myths, but those stories about if you just work hard, that you can be, that's kind of endless possibilities to enrich yourself and be a kind of legacy creator of a new brand or whatever.
I guess the other thing is it's probably Hollywood. It's probably difficult to walk into a producer's office who's making $100 million a year, and everybody that they work with, all the actors, are making hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And you're saying, how about would you guys be interested in a film that's just about critiquing capitalism and the evils of capitalism and greed?
Yeah.
And maybe Brad would like to be in it, and all these other people who are in the top 0.1%, but they like to be in a film that says that we should put their heads on stakes.
Exactly. You've got to do a particular kind of sleight of hand. Maybe if you're George Clooney, you can engage in that sort of cognitive dissonance, being a movie about anti-capitalism, and then go and spend the summer at your house on Lake Como. But the other can't do it.
The other thing, John, about them from a very practical level is that they are cheap to make compared to fantasy films. Because if you want to make a fantasy film, that's a lot of CGI, typically. You know, it's a lot of, we need dragons, we need castles, we need, if you're talking about something like Star Wars, that's like a load of production. Whereas by virtue of the fact that all of these corporate films exist in the real world and it's like, oh, what do we need? We just make a fake.
Exactly.
Or to put an office
basically just
on the sound.
Rent
do a
fake conference room. And then
rent a conference room. And there's like no CGI because it's just people on the phone and trying to make deals. And so they're cheap and easy from that perspective, compared to a traditional fantasy film.
Costume department's pretty straightforward.
Department's pretty
straightforward. Tie or no tie, pleats or no pleats.
Pinstripe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's also true. There's definitely practicalities involved, and I guess it is kind of. It's easy, but also because it's fact. So you're just recounting a series of events which follow a pretty straightforward narrative structure, and you pick your pivotal event. The creation of the Nike Air shoe, and off you go. You kind of you sort of cherry pick the kind of key events, put them on a sort of straightforward narrative trajectory, and you're there, and you can easily pick as your kind of your protagonist, the guy who was the CFO or the CEO or whatever.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
true.
think the other thing is that with the tech film, so you're talking about the WeWork film, you're talking about the Social Network, with those films as well, those kinds of technologies are they're tech companies that everybody is familiar with now because like companies and brands are just generally more part of people's awareness nowadays because in a way that they just weren't in the past. I mean, when I was growing up, I knew about Nike and I thought that was kind of cool. But now everybody, like brands and corporate world is a kind of form of entertainment as well. Everybody's getting fed Elon Musk's latest, what's he done with Twitter? What's he done with SpaceX?
True.
What's happening with, Apple launches just like you open the BBC website and it will be talking about the latest Apple launch.
Yeah.
And so you're just kind of like, you're just getting fed all of this corporate news in a way that you just weren't in the past. So it's just, and you have a conversation with people, like I'll say, I remember being in at a conference last year with my work, something unrelated to tech, and everybody was like, everybody was hanging out. Two of my friends were hanging out to watch the latest Apple keynote because they were going to announce the new iPhone. And then everybody else was like, oh yeah, tell me about the iPhone. And so we're having all these conversations about brands and technology, and we're just interested in them in a way that we weren't before because they are just part of the zeitgeist.
Yeah, it's true. And also they've done this, I mean, particularly kind of Apple has spearheaded this thing that tech companies now try and all ape. I guess is how it's gone. They were the leaders in, iterating their product releases so that everyone becomes this kind of, yearly or 2 yearly sort of event that everyone kind of, waits with bated breath to see what the latest phone is, what the latest kind of innovations in the laptop are, or, all that sort of stuff. And it becomes this, like it's episodic in a way that just making jeans probably isn't, Levi's is like, hey everyone, we've kind of slightly updated. We've re-kitted one of our Thailand factories with a new, and everyone's like, quite rightly, just goes, who cares? I don't even understand what you're talking about. And the other thing I was thinking was, is there already a sort of nostalgia for a sort of capitalism that is a bit more tangible because of, something you talked about last week, which is this sort of financial nihilism that we're heading into, where not only is things becoming more sort of frivolous and kind of weird with crypto and poly market and so on, but they've become less tangible. Like people are making money in ways that are quite difficult to explain to the average person. And I guess not Moneyball, I guess The Big Short kind of did a reasonable job of explaining subprime mortgages and whatever. But it's easier to go, well, let's have a movie about Air Jordans. Let's have a movie about BlackBerry. Let's have a movie about hamburgers, because people go, well, I understand those things. It's like good old fashioned capitalism where you make money from a thing and it's a cool thing. Whereas I don't really understand like making money from some financial product that only really exists in our minds and on a spreadsheet. Like it's not, it's kind of not really a narrative that I understand, or a form of capitalism that I understand. But I do love, the old fashioned guy who says, oh, what if I put an extra zipper on this jacket? And everyone goes, oh, that's great. Yeah. What if I invent the beltless trench coat like Jerry Seinfeld's dad did? That kind of thing is kind of a bit more relatable.
Speaking of Seinfeld, another movie that falls into this genre, which I've not watched, is the Pop-Tart movie that Jerry Seinfeld did, which was, I think, absolutely critically slammed, if I believe correctly.
Yeah. Poor old Jerry's had a couple of attempts at filmmaking now. He tried with B movie, I think it was.
B movie, that's right.
Which was also, ironically, given its title, was not regarded as a top grade piece of filmmaking. And the Pop-Tarts film, which I think, I mean, maybe there was a kind of knowing inclusion of him in the cast because, he's this sort of man-child on the show, Seinfeld. He's this kind of man-child who's into like sort of crappy, into like Twinkies and cereal.
That's right.
And, loves his cereal, loves his
I think
comics.
he was involved. Did he write it? I think he was involved
he wrote
much more than. Did Jerry write the Pop-Tart movie? I thought it was more than him just being in it. Yes, Jerry Seinfeld co-wrote, directed, and produced and starred in the Pop-Tart movie. Official title, Unfrosted, the Pop-Tart Story. Okay. Yeah, so he was like, what I really want to throw myself into is the Pop-Tart movie.
Is the corporate, the capitalist procedural genre.
Yeah, exactly. He said, it's time for me to do a capitalist procedural film. Capitalist procedural should be a genre on Netflix.
It should.
John.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Imagine just scrolling through that and just seeing all of these like business movies that you can watch. The other thing that I read as well, and this must be true, this must skew male, this
I would have
genre
thought
of film.
Yeah.
Like this
Hustle Bros.
Hey honey. Yeah, Hustle Bros. Honey, do you really, let's watch a movie about productivity and efficiency and systems.
Yeah.
And like real nerdy. Let's watch a film about really socially awkward men becoming billionaires. You wanna isn't that for you? I want to watch The Notebook.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what women are always saying. Every time I try and watch one of these corporate procedurals, they say, I want to watch Ryan Gosling in The Notebook. And I'm like, no, we want to watch Ryan Gosling in Drive.
Yeah, that's right. I want to watch Ryan Gosling doing something innovative and entrepreneurial, inventing a new tax strategy, maybe.
That'd be great. A tax film. This is kind of like doc thing, but I did watch the Bernie Madoff docu series, which was super interesting.
Yeah, but then
as well.
And then there's other ones like All the Money in the World, I think did have a sort of a separate theme, but it was partly about this really super rich, maybe it was JP Morgan or something like that. And then you've got, Mad Men always struck me as a sort of strange, I guess like an early TV based version of this, because I thought like, why do I want to know about advertising men really? Kind of interesting. In the 1950s.
60s.
Interesting for a while. Again, might be like a non-fiction book I buy at an airport and then read on the plane and then forget. But I don't really need it to go on for seasons and seasons about, how are we going to advertise tobacco? How are we going to advertise steel?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't really care.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. There's got to be, you mentioned Sam Bankman-Fried, which is obviously going to be in the works because that's a ton of drama.
Yeah.
And they'll briefly explain the blockchain and then say, but it's actually about a bunch of these nerds taking a bunch of speed and going to the Bahamas and each other, and then they stole everybody's money.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you'd be like, I want to see that film. Another one, John, which I'm sure is being optioned, which I would love to go and see because she was such a weirdo, is Elizabeth Holmes from Theranos. That's
Elizabeth Holmes.
Elizabeth Holmes. Sometimes a lot of people have a lot of questions when you're changing the world. People have questions about how you're doing it. People should ask questions when you're changing the world and making things so much better for the world.
That's true. That would be a decent film because she's such a, more about just what a bizarre character she is. I've got a couple of ideas if anyone out there is listening. Please. I don't really have time to write screenplays, and if I did, I wouldn't write one in this capitalist procedural genre. So have at it. One is about the basketball card wars of the 90s. And it'll just be called Upper Deck versus Fleer. And it's about
the
rival.
sad tale of hoops who just are coming in.
Exactly. The other one was about, because there's been a movie about the Air. I think there might have even been a bit of Reebok stuff, but there was another kind of crappy shoe, which you just reminded me of when you said hoops, like a Lynx or something, but you might do something about that. You could do one about the Sorbent campaign in Australia, famous toilet paper campaign featuring a chubby cheeked kid and how it brought Sorbent to dominance of the loo paper market.
Do a toilet paper
just
movie.
call it Ply. You could call it Ply.
Yeah, Plied. Double, triple plied. The story of the
Sorbent saga.
The American brand is Charmin, isn't it? And they have that bear. Yeah. There's that, and all of their, and they use the Charmin bear to sort of explain the problems that you would face with inferior toilet paper, because it's like feminine hygiene products where you can't really show the problem they solve, so you have to think of clever ways of depicting that. And the Charmin bear, that's right, and the Charmin bear gets toilet paper stuck on its big cartoony round bear ass.
Right. Okay,
and it could just be, the whole movie could be about that specifically. That challenge.
They're in the famous scene where they say, but we can't show somebody's bear. And the guy goes, exactly, bear arse. And then they show a bear's ass.
Bear ass.
Ding!
Yeah.
Another one was Fjallraven Kanken versus Herschel, the hipster backpack wars.
This one, that feels like it could be one actually, and it would absolutely be like a pretty mid-budget Netflix or Amazon movie.
You get
one.
People, I can imagine, Jason Schwartzman or something. Yeah, exactly.
Have you seen Pact?
Pact and Glide be the new with a new,
or Unpacked.
Or
Packed or Unpacked.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it. Wow.
Do you have any more? I'm just looking around my house. I'm just having a look around my house at products. What about this? I got one here for you. What about this?
Oh, yeah. Uggs. There you go. Classic.
I can't get the focus. Oh, there we go.
Ugg. Yeah. I mean that.
Yeah.
That actually.
I know a little bit about the history of this product actually already. This was started by an Australian surfer who was trying to solve the problem of just having wet, cold feet when he got out of the surf and went to his car.
Oh.
And he wanted a little cozy boot to warm up his little sort of cold, damp foot.
There you go.
And then they went from we're coming up with this. We're developing the script on air live.
Yeah,
John, you and me.
Casting,
and then
who would you put in it? You'd probably put Joel Edgerton and Hugh Jackman in there.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I mean, the interesting thing about the Ugg is, of course, it went from and is largely still a house shoe in Australia that you'd never be seen dead wearing outside of the house.
You wouldn't.
And suddenly, American celebrities were wearing them to go and get their giant ice mocha frappuccino down on Hollywood Boulevard and Venice Beach. And you're like, why are Americans wearing Ugg boots and why are they wearing them?
Why are they wearing them outside?
Down outside.
Yeah.
What's going on there?
What's
that film going to be called?
Yeah, Ugg's a pretty good name, isn't it? It's just kind of Ugg. Quite a quirky name. But yeah, I remember when you used to be able to get Uggs in there were big metal tubs at petrol stations that you could just get a pair of Ugg boots for $10. Now they're designer items.
They're like $300.
Yeah.
Shout out to my mother who gifted me this particular pair of Uggs, and I've had them maybe 4 years, and they are on my feet every single day. It's just, I love them. I love them so much. I love a cozy Ugg. What else have we got?
AeroPress. That's a pretty nifty product.
Yeah, AeroPress. I also know a little bit about the history of that.
Wow.
And again, this is so weird. Like that we know these
all these
stories.
Corporate tales. Exactly.
Yeah, corporate tales. I mean, it could be a series. It could be. I mean, it's kind of like how we built that, or how I built that, which is a podcast.
How stuff gets made, whatever. There's a bunch of those things. Oh,
What
yeah,
about the
Garmin.
story
Fitbit.
of the X's? Yeah, Fitbit versus Garmin.
Fitbit versus Garmin. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to just take the and start as a studio, just see how far you could push it. Can you get,
Yeah.
the story of two accountants with rival tax minimization strategies and try
Trying to land a
and
client.
dramatize that and put like real A-listers in there just reading an incredibly dry script.
Yeah, what's his name from My Left Foot and
Yeah,
There Will Be
Daniel
Blood.
Day-Lewis, exactly.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah.
As the
I don't know. I mean, I didn't watch The Phantom Thread partly because it struck me as a little bit adjacent to Capitalism.
What's the Phantom Thread?
That's one of his movies, and it's about, let's see, it's about a celebrated dress designer whose meticulous lifestyle undergoes a dramatic change when he falls for a waitress who becomes his muse and lover. And I just thought, nah, I don't really care about that. I want you to just do, can you just make Last of the Mohicans too?
That sounded like you were reading the description of Rochelle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Daniel Day-Lewis is Rochelle in A Young Woman's Journey from Milan to Minsk. Erotic journey.
John, I've loved this, and I've loved that you've named something that has gone, as far as I'm aware, because I looked this up.
Yeah.
And I don't think that very much has been written about it, and I don't think that it's been given a name. Can we get this into the vernacular?
Yeah.
Can we get this into the lingua franca of Earth? Can people start naming capitalist procedural films?
Yeah. You could,
as a genre.
Yeah, exactly. Or you could say commerce procedural. That's a slightly slicker. If you've got a better one, you think's going to catch on, write us, because I really want a legacy. I don't care what it is, and if it's a genre, fine.
hello@dptm.org. Write us in and tell us I've given you a couple ideas. The Garmin versus Fitbit. We've talked about how the UGG exploded, how the AeroPress became a thing. Write us in and let us know. We've been getting a few
Dyson.
beautiful.
What about Dyson? What about Lord Dyson and how he
that's good. I feel like
innovated sucking? You could just call it suckers.
He's basically just revolutionized how we move air through the world.
Exactly. And now he's one of Suck. Yeah, that's right. They've all got names like that, don't they? And now he's one of Britain's biggest landholders. So there you go.
Is that right?
Yeah, he's huge old.
Like farms?
I think he owns, how in Britain there's kind of this, it's quite common for people to basically be on very long-term leases that are owned on land that's owned by oligarchs and nobles. He's one of those types, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So there you go. He made money from saying, I've seen a need in the market to move air from point A to point B. Air and detritus.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, and I've enjoyed that. Everybody, if you've enjoyed the podcast, please share it with a friend today. You must have a friend who's like, oh, man, I didn't know there was such a genre.
Yeah.
And now it's been named. Just click the little share button and send it over to a friend. We would love that. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much, John, and we can't wait to see you next week.
Podcast.